Okay, and we are live. How's it going, chat? It's been a little while since I've streamed, but here we are now. I'm joined by Canadian fashion designer Adrian Wu. How's it going, Adrian?
Good. How are you?
I'm not bad. Uh, so, as you know, I find you quite interesting. I looked at your videos and I was uh, fascinated, especially about new twa gender and you talking about this idea of designing the third gender. Um, but before we get into that, could you tell me a bit about how you ended up at this point? Where maybe go back to before you thought about gender too much, and what was the path to now, and what is where you're at now? If that's not too much to ask.
No, it's not an easy question to answer. I think the first word that comes to mind is the internet, because I started my career off the internet.
And
I don't know. I don't know if I. No, go ahead.
But was that fashion you were? Or?
Well, I am a self-taught designer. I wanted to become a sex therapist, but for some reason, I went into clothing design, and I learned a lot of the things I learned online. So my career started online because I was posting things on Facebook when no one was posting things at that time. That was about 2009, and yeah, things got pretty intense after people started to contact me.
Started to contact you about what?
About the work I was posting. So I made 50 dresses in my parents' basement when I was about 18 to 19 years old. And I put those photos online, and everything sort of took off from there.
Right. So that's how the fashion thing got going. And you were saying the gender stuff was also through you being so involved online.
That's to be honest, I didn't really think about my own gender until it's not easy because this has all sort of happened, at least the radical changes in terms of.
Was there any major event, like any
major event?
One thing, if you had to pick out one point where you go, okay, this was the start of my path toward becoming new twa, or?
Well, it's been, if you on my YouTube channel, Bong, there's a video that I made called My Non-Binary Transition. And it's sort of outlined 25 years of me growing up. And it's not easy for me to answer this question, and I wish I could give you a more dramatic answer. But it has honestly been a very gradual process. I think definitely there was a moment when I started to wear my own dresses that people started to question my gender, but I simply, at that time, identified as a cis gay man who liked to be androgynous.
Right. So you started wearing dresses, but you're saying it's less of a cross-dressing thing and more of a trying to hit the middle kind of thing.
Well, I guess the funny thing is that, in my opinion, cross-dressing is a little bit of an outdated term at this point, just like how the word transsexual may not be politically correct. But I guess there was a point when I started to shave my head. To be honest, I didn't completely understand why, but I knew that I wanted to start removing the concepts of gender from myself because I had gone through so many different phases in masculinity and femininity.
Something about that. You don't think a shaved head could be considered masculine?
I think it depends on how you view it. I think it's sort of relative if you think about it. I think you and I have had a conversation, maybe like a brief conversation in the past about like what is it am I really bringing up a question of what does it really mean to be human? And I do think things started to make sense when I started doing research on, people like Martine Rothblatt. Do you know who Martine Rothblatt is?
I do not.
She's a transgender woman, said to be the richest woman in America. She invented Sirius Radio.
Right.
And she came out as transgender similarly about a couple years ago. When I found out about her story, when I also found out about the two people that made the movie The Matrix, who also came out transgender, it was about the same time that I started to question my own gender. And I guess that's when I started to make the connections about what does it really mean to be human and how my work has been a parallel. That makes any sense to
I'm going to be entirely honest, not really.
No, well, please ask questions.
I want to get back to this though, because the removal of gender though, because I asked, do you not think a shaved head is more masculine? Is it at least more masculine than feminine? Because I don't think you're going to remove gender by just going, okay, no hair, so it's not going to be masculine and feminine, because
harmful. You have to understand it's more complicated than that. This has been a strategic process.
Because my understanding would be more like you'd maybe balance out things that were more typically masculine with things that were feminine. But for example, your eyebrows, you talk about your eyebrows, getting rid of them because you can have more masculine, bushier ones or feminine, slim ones. But I'm not buying that gets rid of gender, because you might still have, the ridge of your, the bone around your eye might be more masculine or more feminine. How far can you go? What does it really do to get rid of gender?
I want to clarify something. I have never said that I want to get rid of gender.
Right. It's just the way I'm saying it.
It's okay. That's another reason why I like the word "nutois." See,
explain that then. Yeah.
When I heard the word "nutois," I can honestly tell you, it was a YouTube channel named Micah, who identified as neither male or female, but also gone through hormonal HRT, hormone replacement therapy. So it was one of the first times that I had seen a transgender individual that also recognized as gender nonconforming. And the reason why I like the word "nutois," which was only coined since 1995. So I'm not sitting here trying to force people to believe that this has existed forever. But it was used by a trans person in France in 1995 to describe, as they self-identified as, the third gender.
Hang on. When you say not trying to make people believe that it's been around forever, are you saying that because you think it's new? Do you think it is new, or do you think it's been around before then, whatever it is?
This is where the controversy comes in, because I can sit here and admit to you that it's been around forever, and that would support the transgender movement, because there is a lot of evidence that the existence of transgender people have been around forever, and that simply our own self-awareness, technology, and has allowed us to better understand this about ourselves, that you can be transgender. But this is where, it does get a little uncomfortable for me to admit that for me personally, I do think it's sort of a new idea. Yeah, the gender non-conforming part.
Okay, so and at least specifically nutois is definitely new.
Yeah, and let me finish up with what my explanation with nutois is. That
okay? Please explain that. That would be very good.
Yeah, is that it makes so much sense to me that the word itself embraces gender, because it's not that I'll be honest with you right now. I hated the word non-binary. I hated the word agender, because I am proud that I was born a male. I'm not ashamed that I was born, my biological sex was male. I'm not ashamed of that. That's why I like the word du toi, because it also sort of just simply allows the idea of a third gender to exist, let alone a fourth gender or a fifth gender or so on and so forth. So to me, the word, keep in mind that Alan Watts said that language is a byproduct of philosophy. At the end of the day, the things we are saying right now are all words, and it's second result of philosophy. So to me, these words really are not that important in the long run, but are important for the movement, for gender nonconforming and transgender people to be accepted among society. Maybe that answers your question.
Not really, but it raises other questions.
Please go ahead.
Here you are talking about having a third gender and a fourth gender. When I read about non-binary, I get the sense more that it's not its own specific thing and it's quite broad. But the way you're talking about it is almost as if you want Nutoire to be quite distinct. Would you? And that reminds me again of when you said you have this idea of designing a third gender. Am I getting warm at all with the thought that, okay, we have that would be stereotypically a man, maybe muscular, broad shoulders, whatever. You have the stereotypical woman, like maybe slim, wide hips, whatever. And then you would want to be the image of what Nutoire is.
Okay, let me clarify. I like the word Nutoire because it helps people. It helps those that are cisgender or those that are just simply not transgender to have a better understanding of the concept of non-binary. Going back to Nutoire is just a word. Now, the second thing I would say is that, do I want me to be the image?
I saw you smile. I get the sense that because you're a fashion designer, and then you talk about designing a third gender. Wouldn't you like, at the very least, to be, if people bring up Nutoire, they'll go, here's a prime example, here's Adrian Wu. Would you like that, or would you not like that? And to maybe have a hand in shaping what is seen in general by society as being the Nutoire look.
Harmful. You have to understand, we don't live in a society where I can just legitimately clone someone and experiment on bodies. Unfortunately, the only body that I could experiment and what we all have are our own bodies. I understand that at least people have called me a fashion designer. Yes, I like the word clothing designer better because
okay.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. But the point I want to make was that whether you interpret it or anyone else interprets it as me being at the top to me, it's not that important, to be honest. I mean, there are other trans people that look like me, believe it or not.
So would I be anywhere near the mark if I were to say that it's not about you, it's about your body? If I was going to have them as two, you and your body as separate things, like the thing you're designing is your body and this is your experiment to create.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Harmful, but you have a body as well. Even though you present yourself as a brain, right?
There's no proof of that. No.
But see, these passive jokes are the same passive jokes I make. We all present ourselves differently, and morphological freedom, which is a transhumanist concept about how we all should have the right to design our own body. You should have the right to present yourself however you want to present yourself.
So how much of what you're doing then is what you feel is necessary for you, maybe from a health standpoint, and how much of it is down to taste then? Because if you're talking about morphological freedom and the freedom to do what you want with your body, that suggests to me that you'd want it to go beyond necessity. How much of what you're doing is beyond necessity, if at all? I'm not suggesting it necessarily is, I'm just asking you.
Maybe it's hard. I'm very open about this, but maybe it's hard for people to believe that, like, I've had a lot of sex in my life. I've had a lot of relationships. I've fallen in love with people. I've attracted people and different kinds of people my whole life in different ways, whether that's out of necessity or not. In Canada, and I know maybe you have your own opinions or about Canada, but
I do, yes.
And, yeah, I've seen your channel. You know, and I could argue that you might yourself have some cognitive bias, but I'm not going to go there. But here in Canada, we have the luxury of thought because we have free healthcare, because we have, to a certain degree, benefits. My father is a gynecologist obstetrician who grew up in a war-torn country, you know, running away from a dictator. But then with the contradictory of Hong Kong, British, I'm not going to get into that. You have your necessities. You know, is it important whether or not it's a necessity? I think maybe it's more of a question for you. Why is that important?
I'm not trying to make any sort of judgment. I'm just genuinely curious if you feel like, because typically when I hear about anything to do with transgender or different genders, and when it comes to anything medical, it's presented to me as necessary. Like, this is health, this is maybe fixing a problem. What I'm wondering is, how much of it for you is, okay, this is who I need to be, and how much of it is your interest in experimenting?
Oh, then I would say, oh, that's a very hard question.
So there is some split there, is there, or no?
I can admit there's a split, but it's very hard for me to quantify that right now.
Which one's in the lead? Can you say which one's ahead? Is it more necessity, like medical and or?
I'll be honest, I can't answer that question. I'm still figuring that out, and I can understand maybe where you're leaning towards or where you want me to lean towards, but I'll be honest, it's hard for me to. Yeah, I'll be honest, it's hard for me. Maybe you can move on to the next question.
Right. Well, I don't have a
okay.
set list of questions. I'm just trying to go with the flow. Maybe chat will give some questions as well. I know someone had a more fun question. Have you watched Zoolander?
Of course.
You know, if I say blue steel, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You do that a lot. Oh, is that on purpose? Is that on purpose, or is it? People were asking before the stream started for me to ask you.
Do you have any bad habits?
Probably something that could be counted as bad habits.
But do you have any habits that you can't explain?
Is it is it that sort of thing for you? Like, is it a tick?
I mean, everyone's face is different. You know, it's really quite interesting. When I started presenting myself this way, people sort of, not to make this judgment on you, but it seems like people think this is more about the physicality. This is about my body. But I guess,
so it's not about the change in your body.
Like, do you remember you just mentioned medicine, right? And necessity, right? Medicine can also affect your mind as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, of course.
Yes. So that's why I specify on my channel, and not my channel, but the channel I've been working on, and a lot of articles that I write, I tend to specify a distinction between the cognitive changes and the physical changes, because I can acknowledge that there are different changes happening.
Okay, so is the right, because I was thinking the whole design thing was about creating an image of what the third gender looks like, but this design is more about what's in your mind.
It's more about removing. Like if you look at yourself in a mirror, or you look at a person you find attractive, don't you ever question yourself, why? Why am I attracted?
Oh yeah, of course, but
Why am I attracted to them? How much of my body, my physique, my biology, my sex drive is being drawn to this person? How much of it is a understanding? It's intuitive. You know, I'm sure you question these things about yourself as well.
It's not question in I think I perhaps think about it in a different way to you, if I understand. So is what you're trying to do remove the bit that's less about reason, perhaps?
I think
Or
you're onto something if you say it that way.
understanding? It sounds almost like uh, I'm reaching with what I've got here, but
Okay.
you want almost, it almost sounds to me like you want your companionship to be based on objective ground. Like, is that anywhere in the right ballpark?
Absolutely. And I meet very few people that are as objective as I am. That's maybe, I don't know if you know this, but I like to think that a lot of trans people, we sort of live outside our bodies. And I think for me, I definitely feel like I can drift in and out of my body. I can, you know, maybe a conventional doctor would call that what is it, multiple personality disorder, all these so-called disorders, you know. But when I make these passive jokes about disorders, also because I was raised to think mental illness doesn't exist. You know, that's Chinese people have, at least my parents, being Chinese, you know, they have a different concept and on how the mind works. And I find Canadians definitely have another way of thinking about the mind.
I see. So here's a question that's just come to my mind.
Yeah.
Most people are not going to feel the same way as you about this sort of thing, and for most people, all of that stuff that we don't control is kind of special, and it's part of how we understand everything, which sure does lead to problems sometimes. Do you not worry that you're going to become detached from other people because you no longer share that experience as much? And
it's already happening.
It's already happening, right? Could you go into some more detail about that?
I can be honest with you. I, in many ways, have already alienated myself from everyone, even my own family.
There's a video where you play a recording of your mother crying, or is that?
And yes, and that, believe it or not, is real. I can be honest with you. I have literally, as an adjective or a verb, alienated myself. And
how does that feel?
something I deal with. And my father taught me to experience things and then move on. Experience misery and then move on. Experience anger and then move on. Maybe that's a Wu Wei philosophy. The Chinese, you know, it's going with the flow. And every day is a contradiction for me, I'll be honest, because I was born and raised in Canada. So
What are you going to do? Or do you think there's a risk of cutting off everything? Because I look at your channel and I see you seem to have friends, or at least acquaintances. What's different between your connection to them and your connection to your family? Do you feel that your family connection was driven by uncontrollable, base instinct and the connection to family, and your friends are more of a connection born out of objective consideration? Or what's the
David,
difference? Why won't that happen with everyone?
David and I talk about this a lot.
Who's David? Sorry.
David O. David O. I mentioned him in he's my longest friend. He's also the first person that ever admit to me that they were transgender. But as David and I've said to him before that if I ever die, or if I ever just disappear.
Do you plan on possibly not dying?
No, but if I ever do, before my parents, I want David to tell my parents that they never knew me. They actually never knew me. I don't think.
Why would you want that though? What?
Like, I know that's maybe hard to hear, but
I'm trying to think of what your motivation behind that is, because that doesn't sound like something coming from a cold, reasoned place. That sounds, if I had to, right, from my perspective, that sounds like someone who is, sounds like something that someone who's very upset with their parents might say or want to do.
Yeah, I think when people look at me, sometimes I feel people don't think I have parents, I've done a lot of, keep in mind, I started my career with my work, not my being. I've only started putting myself out there maybe in the past year. I'll be honest though, I feel that way. The way I feel about my parents, I contradictorily feel about even David. David and I have this joke that, both our parents raised us to not trust them. Even my parents sort of raised me to be so independent that I don't even need them. I don't need their love. Maybe that's this Chinese survival tactic, but David is also Jewish, not to bring up race and not to get racial, but David and I relate.
If you want to.
No, it's just David and I relate in many, many different ways. And I talk about him so much because he has made such an impact on my life. And it's survival. I think don't you think you're trying to, maybe you don't think, I don't know if you think about this, but don't you think about how so much of your life is just trying to continue to exist? No? Is that too dramatic?
I think it probably is. It probably is. I'm not having to worry about starving. I'm not having to worry about shelter or anything like that. I don't entirely understand what you're saying, because most of my basic needs are fulfilled, so I don't have to think about that much. What are you thinking about when you say survival? You're not thinking about, oh God, I'm going to have to scavenge for food and start a fire. What is survival for you?
I'm not thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
That's exactly what I had in mind. Yeah.
This is another conversation David and I have quite a bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I think, not a lot, but we tend to think that we must accomplish self-actualization. And I think I did reach self-actualization a couple times in my life. And David, and I didn't understand this until David really planted in my head that maybe you need to start thinking about self-actualization as something you drift in and out of, not something you achieve. Because I think we all tend to have an expectation that we have to achieve a goal like happiness. But I can accept the contradiction that I'm not always going to be happy. I'm not always going to be accepted. And that's another reason why, you know, I don't get uncomfortable when people misgender me. But I think the
Speaking
conversation.
of that and acceptance, if I can take this on another path, what is your experience with not being accepted? Do you have many problems with people? Because I'm sure, as you've noticed on the internet, a lot of people find you quite shocking, perhaps. What is it like in real life? Do you experience a lot of problems or discrimination?
David and I like keep mentioning David. I think you can trick someone to thinking that you're attractive. I think you can trick someone into thinking that you're smart. I think you can trick someone into thinking that you're happy.
Are you not happy?
I'd rather people think I have cancer. I'll be honest, at this point in my life, I'd rather people think I have cancer than to think I'm male or female.
You've said that before in a video. That almost seems like a catchphrase at this point. Is that something you like to put out there? Why does that stick with you?
Why is it such a bad thing if people think you're sick? Why is it a bad thing if people think, like,
I wouldn't want people to think I'm sick. I wouldn't want people to think I have cancer. I've got a shaved head.
But I mean, when you die, people are not going to really remember you. They'll remember the things you did with your life. At least maybe that's how I see it. Like, that's really what you leave upon the world is your ideas, your influence. Sure, yes, like love stories are one thing, and, you know, what we look like, and, you know, that's great, but that's why I think objectivity is so important. You know?
Then what's interesting to me is you value objectivity highly, and then you talk about how you can trick people.
Yes.
Is that not a really bad thing to do then? If you value objectivity and you're going to try to trick people into thinking something's true that's not, even if it's about you.
Okay, I don't mean to bring this up, but that's business. You know, that's for whatever reason, I'm sure you think about this as well. You and I were born in a time period where money exists. Money exists. Business exists. We are all struggling to put food on our plate, whether it's big or small. You know, you can understand that when it comes to business relationships or opportunities, or I think there is unfortunately a distinction right now between the personal and the professional life, whatever that means. Does that sort of make any sense? Or
it makes sense in and of itself as an encapsulated point, but
you have to play both hats as well, you know, based on what you do for a living, I'm sure.
What I'm saying though is you're talking about tricking people into thinking you're attractive or happy. How does that line up with
it's not
you want to have relationships based on objective analysis?
This is actually something my father taught me, is that it's sometimes it's quite easy to be happy, you know, like it's a chemical reaction. You know, my philosophy teacher that died in high school, Mr. Moore, he said, you know, what if I told you that emotions are choice? You can control your emotions because all emotions start with an idea. I guess when I say these things to you, I know it sounds maybe harsh or radical maybe, but I'm simply trying to help people see things from a different perspective. And that's that maybe happiness isn't always that important, and sadness is not. Maybe there's more to life than what we feel.
Okay, sure. I'm trying to connect some things together.
Please.
You bring up this quote from your philosophy teacher or whoever, emotions are a choice or whatever, and how you feel is important. That stuff being a choice, why do you need the hormones or whatever else you're on to influence, to get rid of the influence of things you don't want to influence you? Why can't you just choose?
I mean, I'm lost for words right now because I'm trying to, there's like 25 different types of cognitive bias.
25, like exactly 25. Can you?
Exactly 25, yes. And I remember there was one that was in-group bias is one, right? And then there's another one, what is it? When someone else does not have as much knowledge as you, and what was your question again? Sorry.
Right. I was saying you bring up this quote that emotion is choice. You can choose emotion, and you talk about maybe feelings aren't the most important thing. Maybe being happy isn't the most important thing, but in particular, emotions are choice. You talk about wanting to get away from maybe base instinct and
I said emotions can be choice, by the way. I didn't say emotions
can be choice. Okay. I'll ask a different question.
Okay.
When you consider emotions can be choice, do you mean in terms of you simply being able to choose how you feel, or does that relate to your the hormones you're taking that help you have less of a certain kind of bias?
I mean, okay.
Are you choosing through medication or?
Yeah. Let's just talk about medication for a second. If you take out the word medication, you take out the word pharmaceutical, take out the word corporate pharmaceutical, you take all those words out, it's just chemistry. To me, it's just another form of technology like a watch, another form of technology like a battery. It's something that helps improve our life. And for whatever reason, I got to a point in my life where I don't want sex hormones anymore. And I also recognize that my entire life, I've been driven by my sex hormones. Again, I can only speak for me, but it's caused me to do some very unproductive things. And whether I identify or not identify, I do believe, because keep in mind, not all trans people transition. There's a difference between being transgender and
I understand that.
Yeah.
You're comparing this choice to other technology, I guess, or other advances, like you say a watch or this. Choosing to apologies if I've got this wrong, but you've had yourself chemically castrated. Am I correct?
Well, see, trans women, conventionally trans women, for the past maybe more than a decade, they have been taking an anti-androgen and an estrogen. See, to take estrogen, it's not good just to take estrogen. It's not what doctors have found, that it's not good on the body. So it's easier when you're also taking an anti-androgen. Now, there are different kinds of anti-androgens that suppress testosterone, but the one I'm on is spirulactone, which was discovered to be an anti-androgen by accident, because I believe it's a diuretic. And it also is used for acne medication as there's feminizing effects. But as you know, different medications can do different things and multiple things. And coincidentally, in Canada, the drug that is mostly or not mostly used as an anti-androgen also just happens to be the same drug that's given to sex offenders in the UK, that, yes, on some level can be defined as chemically castrating yourself.
But you want that, don't you, to get rid of that drive?
And I'm one of the few people that I can admit that I want that.
Okay, but what I'm trying to get at is, you talk about, okay, it's just more technology. Like we've got watches, we've got whatever else. This is a bit more serious than getting a watch.
Explain to me how
Is it
serious.
not?
Can you explain to me why is this more serious?
You mean why is a permanent change to your body more serious than purchasing a watch?
Okay, first, there is not enough research right now to reliably predict whether or not HRT is entirely safe. The technology's been around for what, less than 50 years. HRT also is not permanent on some level. Yes, I am sterile now, but there has been documented cases of people stopping HRT and being able to have children again. And maybe you didn't know that, but you can revert. There is such thing as detransitioning, and there are people that do that.
Okay, but I still think it's a bit more significant than getting a watch. I don't think it
I'm
quite
not going
lines
to
up.
call it.
Maybe
Yeah,
in the
yes.
future,
I'm not
maybe in the future it will line up like that.
I'm not going to disagree with you.
Okay.
I won't disagree with you there. I guess the main thing I disagree with what you have said, maybe not now, but in the past, is that the concepts behind transhumanism, not transhumanism, but the technology behind what we consider to be transhumanism is very far ahead. It's too far. It's not. We're not even close. And I think I like to think that I'm helping people see that this stuff that we consider something that's in the so-called future, actually a lot of it exists already.
See, when I think of transhumanism, I think of the cybernetic side of things, like becoming mechanically augmented, that sort of thing, like cool shit like you see in video games. Perhaps I can understand the idea of improving yourself with chemical advancements and medical advancements, but I'm not seeing this as anywhere near anything I would
Wow.
be
Then we can agree to disagree then.
right. What? Okay. Why do you think this is? Okay. Do you think what you're doing should be considered along those lines of transhumanism? You are improving yourself with chemicals.
Again, I do not. I have never called myself a transhumanist. I have never called myself a leader in any type of movement. Well, no, correction. I pride myself in leading or trying to lead the what's happening with transgender individuals and helping advocate for the gender nonconforming movement. But in terms of transhumanism, and when people use the word singularity, I want to throw up in my mouth, because I actually, believe it or not, I am just as skeptical as you. I don't know whether or not you've gotten that by now, but I agree with you. I'm like, we don't know. Maybe it's way too soon to even connect the dots. But
maybe a better way of what I'm trying to say is, I'm underwhelmed. Like we do stuff to ourselves all the time. Even if you're just going to talk about cures to illnesses, or to have something very unexciting, maybe hip replacements to fix things. And if we want to go really simple, like maybe even just fucking protein powder, you could maybe make an argument that having that when we might not have before is some kind of advancement. But what I'd want to see is some massive step, and changing your body with hormones, it doesn't do it for me. I'm like, okay, this
harmful. Can I say something to you?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just underwhelmed as you. Dave and I have said most of innovation is mundane and boring. Most of human civilization and progress is mundane and boring.
Okay, so is what you're doing more symbolic?
It's funny how you're asking me the same questions I ask myself, and maybe this is just going to be this continuing dialogue, because to be honest, I don't know if I can answer that question. Symbolism, well, yeah, maybe the stories I tell and my poetry, whatever poetry or artistic integrity that I have, sure, there is symbolism in that, but it's really up to you to connect the dots. But, you know, maybe I'm talking too much in rhymes. Are you exhausted yet?
Am I what?
Exhausted yet?
No, I'm not exhausted. I'm not exhausted. We're gonna talk for 15 more minutes. So
I'm enjoying that.
Okay. Especially because you've already spoken about tricking people and this is business. How much of what I'm seeing now is business? Or how much of what I'm seeing now is performance?
Okay, I will say nothing that's happening right now is performance. Nothing. This is me. And I'm having a genuine conversation with you. And we can have another.
That I'd rather people thought I had cancer than that I'm a man or a woman line. That's a good line though, right? And you pulled it out again. You had it in a video. Do you not think? Does it not go through your head that okay, this is a line I can use? Is that not going through your head at all? That sort of thing.
What's going through my head?
The thought that I've got this good line. Let's use it again.
Sure, but I have a lot of lines. Yeah, I guess so. Oh, wait, you don't have lines?
Oh, sure, but they're not. They tend to be a bit different to I'd rather people thought I had cancer.
Yeah. Hey, it's been a process. It's not. Again, I'm on it. Like I hope I'm coming off genuine. It's been a process. This whole thing, whatever this thing is. Yeah.
Maybe I should think of a different way to ask this question, because you are interested in spreading a certain idea, are you not, or having some kind of influence, right?
Okay. Yes, that I can say.
In order to do that, you've got to almost perform, don't you? You need to make sure you're projecting the right thing. Otherwise, it's going to be useless, isn't it?
I mean, okay, me putting these mannequins here, that is composition, you know me. That is maybe, yes, a form of performance.
What went through your mind when you had put those layers? Were you thinking, okay, so I can have man, woman, and then I'll be the new toi in the room? Did that go through your mind?
I don't know.
No.
No, I don't know.
It seems almost, especially as well with you having webcams on in your house or in your apartment or whatever you have, 24/7.
Yeah. What about them?
That's, I think you said elsewhere that, oh, it's not about attention or whatever.
Sure, okay.
But having cameras in your house, in your home 24/7,
I mean,
is
if we're ever
really a move I'd associate with someone who isn't really interested.
If we're ever going to get to this point in society where people are more integrated with each other, I think it's important that we start dissecting what the personal and the private is, And you talk about spreading ideas. Yeah, I'm about spreading solutions. Like if George Lewis said that creativity can solve any problem. So it's a creative way that I put myself out there. But
And what's the problem you're trying to solve? You say you have this creativity.
I think it's clear. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we live in a society, like at least at this point, especially after 45 years of the internet existing, you know, human civilization has been around for at least 6,000 years. Connection. Don't you think we sort of have a problem right now with connection? We have a problem with connecting with other people. Social media, at least the current form of social media, it has sort of polarized a lot of us. And I think that we need to get to a point where
you talk about polarization, and then you're this person who like shaves off all your hair and says you'd rather have cancer, and like you're
well, maybe
the problem of connection, and then
maybe you have this idea that I want to repel people, but the reality is that I don't want to repel people. I know I have repelled people, but I want to be understood, not loved. See, the act of understanding is within itself an act of love. And
is that why you have all the cameras in your head?
Yeah, and that in some way, yes. I want people to ask questions. I want people to ask questions of me. I don't want them to just jerk off to, you know, my semi-nude body, you know, and I personally don't see anything sexual about the way I present myself.
Neither do I. But
and that's great, because that's not what I'm interested in any capacity. But connection is definitely, you know, and I'm glad that you're open to just having a conversation with me, because
you when you talked about the problem of connection, at first I thought you meant overall for everyone, but now it seems like the problem is connection for you.
Me too. I struggle. I can admit that I struggle with connection, and that's something I've struggled with my entire life. But I think my argument is that I don't think I'm the only person that struggled with connection with another human being. I don't think I'm the only person that's struggled with feeling understood.
Do you feel like you lack attention?
I mean,
because you say you want people to ask questions of you.
Lack attention. You know, I've made a career out of attention on top of work, on top of ideas, on top of performance, on top of designing. So I guess you could say you're right. Yeah.
Does that influence what you're doing? Does that influence, because you've said, no, you're not having yourself look like this way to repel people. Is it to become a curiosity so then people will be more interested in you? Is that any element of it? Any fraction?
I mean, harmful. I want to reiterate that I'm not the only person that looks like this. Like, maybe it's hard for you to believe, but
I've seen bald people with shaved eyebrows before.
No. But I meant trans people or gender nonconforming people that look like me, and I don't think I'm the only one. And I don't think there's anything wrong with not having hair in my head. You know, one of my longest relationships.
Don't worry too much about that in particular. I'm just using that as the example of. I'm just wondering if an element of why you personally do that is so that people will view you as and be interested.
Last time I checked, like life is about existing. Existing means to exist, to be like, to either you exist or you not exist. At least that's how it works in our dimension, you know. But you know, we can sit here and discuss back and forth attention and the fine lines between attention and existing and wanting a lot of attention, or I'm just trying to be myself, but isn't that the beautiful thing about the internet, is that everyone has the freedom to just be who they want to be and to put themselves out there the way they want to put themselves out there.
Sure, but I don't know if we're getting to what I want to know. So as we're coming up to the end of the hour we're going to talk for, I'm going to try to come up with a good question that we can go out for the rest of the time. Where do you want this to go? Let's say everything about what you're doing, you want to spread this idea or have awareness of something, whatever it is. Let's say what you'd ideally have happened has happened. What was it? What would it be?
Well, first word comes to mind is integration. When we've gotten to a point in society where we're all integrated.
And what do you mean by that?
I don't know. Terence McKenna talks a lot about how culture is not your friend. He talks. What did he say? He said, Terence McKenna said, life is, we stepping on each other's shoulders, kicking each other's teeth in. When the reality is that we do have the technology and the know-how and the love and the respect to live in this type of human, at this sort of utopia. I don't know whether or not that's ever going to exist, where wars, like,
do you think
what are you going to say?
A barrier to that is
plenty of barriers.
Stuff you're trying, or one major barrier to that is the stuff you're trying to remove from yourself. What I'm saying is not just the sex drive, but any other kind of emotional drive that gets in the way of objectivity.
Yeah.
Is that a big problem? Do you think the world would be a better place if everyone was able to be more like you and do what you're doing, if they were able to cut that bit off of themselves? Not physically, but that bias.
Yeah, like, I don't know how much you know about nihilism, but if everyone embraced life being meaningless, or as much meaningful as it is meaningless, I think people would be happier. I'll be honest there. I think, the best answer to your question is, it would be amazing if we got to a point in society where identities didn't need to exist. I think that's that's the closest way I can answer your question, is that
to become a unified collective, do you mean?
Yes, you could say that. Your words, not mine. Yeah.
Thousands of Adrian Woos, all of them bold and shiny, just moving as one mass. Would that be good? You're smiling. Is that a thumbs up? Yeah.
No, because I'm laughing that.
Okay.
I'm thinking to myself that it's so easy to think, so easily put me there. But if I had the choice, I would have my mind would have multiple bodies, so that you wouldn't have to think that this whole thing is about me. Maybe you will never believe me that what I'm trying to do has nothing to do with me.
Are you doing it for mankind, sort of? Is it that sort of endeavor? Like providing a stepping stone?
The word mankind itself is already a very sort of binary language, but for humanity is, I have my own, like, for all.
You know what I meant, though.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm just being an asshole.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I guess maybe.
Do you ever maybe have a dream or just imagine yourself as being maybe a note in a history book, a book about, okay, Adrian Wu was this person who had a little nudge on culture to make us go this way. This notable character.
I will say, I hope the ideas are useful. Like, more of the ideas, less about, no, really, like less about me and more about the ideas. Maybe you'll never believe that again, or maybe
okay,
no one.
Okay, fine. You want your idea. You think your ideas should be a step.
Harmful. I don't know if you've gotten this by now, but this whole thing that I've been talking about is about getting our minds out of this idea that you have an idea and I have an idea. It's not my idea. It's not your idea. Like Elizabeth Gilbert talks a lot about how.
Okay, fine. Those ideas that you have.
But no, but I could still argue, like, these aren't my ideas. I'm the one. I've just been putting these like puzzle pieces together. But as you know, we didn't call ourselves genius until the Renaissance. And before the times of
you say putting the pieces together, like you're solving a puzzle.
Well, like before the time, like I don't. But
related to your thoughts about you being so objective.
Most people, I don't know if people know this. Before the times of the Renaissance, a genius, Plato believed that a genius was something that lived in his house. That when he came up with an idea, it didn't come from himself. It came from his genius. And it wasn't until the Renaissance that people started calling themselves geniuses. And I really think we need to start going back to that time period before the Renaissance, before we started calling ourselves geniuses. And I think we really need to get to a point where when we talk about a collective, and you said the word collective, we need to get out of this language that it's your thing, it's my thing. We're all just minds floating, and we're just talking. These are just words, and unfortunately, we can't escape these bodies. Unfortunately, we can't escape this language that exists in our dimension. So, just I don't mean I'm not taking offense. I just want to clarify that I want people to understand that you don't have to think about things as you or me. And that's why Dave and I talk a lot about things being a verb, not a noun, talking about things as a verb, not a noun. So.
Right. Okay. Well, is there anything in particular you want to say? Do you have anything on your mind? Maybe your last thought for this stream, or?
No, I just want to say thank you to you. Thank you for just.
No problem. Thanks for coming on.
No, I appreciate Harmful. It's nice to have a objective conversation.
Right. Okay. I think chat enjoyed it too. So, I think we're going to wrap it up there. God, I never know how to end a stream. So, I'm going to say goodbye to the chat box. Bye, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. Check out Adrian's channel, and also Wikipedia page for Adrian is in the description box as well, if you think Adrian's interesting or you want to see more. Right. Till next time, toodle pip.